All right then, so let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for Python Full Stack Web Developers, turning your ideas into a product. Really excited to see everyone here for the first session. Let's go to the next slide, introduce our speaker, Katerina. Katerina Hanson is a senior engineering manager at Kojo, procurement solution startup. She has multiple years of experience managing large product teams, as well as a background in project engineering. Katerina advocates for a balance between agile and waterfall processes for a smooth project workflow with visibility. Katerina, I'll hand the microphone over to you.
Thank you. All righty. Goals for today. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction on how to develop your projects. We're going to introduce an example project, kind of ideate on the technical solutions and the architecture, and get to a database design, and then kind of go through a basic tech stack that would work for the project that we're going to start developing together. As an introduction, what is a project? One of the things that I learned kind of early on when I had gone through my PMP, professional, I think it was like project manager professional certification. Projects are they're a whole thing, right? They have an objective. They have a defined lifespan. They're going to have a start and an end. If it's a team that is kind of just continuously working and taking asks and they never actually, have a step change, that's not really going to be like a project team. That's going to be more of a support team. Project teams are going to have, these unique projects coming in. You want to have defined scope. They're going to require resources in terms of people and attention rather than capacity. And they tend to have a good amount of risk. And so you can manage the risk. And we tend to try to manage the risk through a variety of different types of processes and controls. But yeah, one of the big things about projects is that, they're defined start and end, and they go through phases. Typically, the phases of a project are something along the lines of an initiation, where you define the goals, the business case, the stakeholders. There's like an ideation process of what are you doing? You might have to go out and gather information for your project. Then you're going to plan, and typically the product managers in at least the startups that I have been involved in, take care of the initiation portion and a good amount of the planning, but your engineers should really start to be involved in the planning of the project. The earlier you can get people involved in your projects, really the better, because a lot of times they will see issues and problems with things kind of coming down the road, and the earlier you make changes and improvements to your project, the less it's really going to cost in terms of both money and time. So planning is really important in the projects. Then we usually go through the execution phase, where you build the thing. And during execution, it's really important to kind of determine if you are on track. If you find that you're getting off track, the goal of pretty much every engineer involved should be to raise those concerns to their managers, to product, to the stakeholders. Hey, we learned something new. The plan that we had, the amount of time that we were going to put into it, it's not what we thought it was. We're going to have to take longer. We're going to have to do this other thing. And then that really gives the stakeholders a chance to decide whether or not that project's still worth doing, whether or not they want to cut scope in order to get the project to a finished state, whether or not they need to redefine something or move headcount around or get more resources. You don't really want to add resources at the last minute. It doesn't help, because then you have to onboard those resources, and then that will take some time. So it really is just one of those things that, like, once you kind of understand the cost of the project, execution is all about working through it and making sure that it is costing what you thought it was going to cost. Monitoring and controlling, that's kind of like after you launch it, you want to make sure that you are monitoring your project and the results. And then closing it would be, did we get the results we were looking for? Is it making things worse? Do we have to rip it back out? A lot of times with risk, that is a risk that you might have to just completely undo it or shut it down. But that, this period here could take 6 months to get enough information to decide whether or not your project was truly successful. And then I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit on Agile versus Waterfall. My background was as a process engineer, which was a chemical engineer, a manufacturing engineer, really like hardware related. And so they were very much on the waterfall side. It was plan everything. This project's going to take a minimum of a year or two. And so things were very expensive to purchase and install and weld and everything. So the more planning you did up front, the more you could control costs later. Well, software tends to be very much more agile. You think you can turn on a dime. But even Agile was developed in like the early days of software engineering, where you're basically like a web developer and you had a client, and the client might not be very technical. They might not know what they want. And you were typically building them a website, something very simple where you could change it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. You could show them and say, hey, these are the buttons I have. Do you like the way it looks? And, oh, I don't like it. Go back in and change it real quick. That doesn't work the more complicated the software gets. There's like a level, in my opinion, of complexity beyond which it starts to cost too much to change the code that quickly, and where a little bit more upfront planning will pay a lot of dividends in the end. Not to mention, you're going to get better alignment between yourself and your stakeholders and your leadership, and they're going to be more likely to trust you with resources that you need to make these projects happen. So I tend to advocate for a little bit more of a planning method to doing some large scale projects than maybe the pure Agile theory says. So we're going to get into that here. All right, so this is my idea for a project for us to work on. So we have a problem. Food delivery apps are taking just huge margins off of the top of restaurants' earnings. Restaurants are typically really low margin. So my question is, what value is the app adding that constitutes a 20 to 40% markup? It's mostly convenience to the end user, I would say. So it's convenient for searching for food that you want to eat across multiple different restaurants. You can view menus, prices, and images all in the same spot. You can look at the restaurant schedules. Is it open? You get a delivery person matched up with your order. You can pay with the same save payment method across multiple different restaurants. But I feel as a hypothesis that this is not actually a hard thing to build. And these websites are really not adding very much value. Open source can be so inexpensive, literally just the hosting fees, that people might be willing to add an open source restaurant delivery method to their general plan on how to sell their food. And that is my hypothesis. So we are going to build an open source project. It's going to be server code that we can allow restaurants to host themselves. I'm going to aim for a fairly decentralized architecture with a specialized API so that anybody can write front-end clients. I'm not necessarily going to provide a front-end client, but we'll have, backends that people can host, and then that it has a specific boundary layer in your API, and then people can write front-end against it. I want to have a way to discover restaurants that are involved in this open restaurant system. I want restaurants, I think that they can manage their own delivery as like a start. So the restaurants used to all hire delivery people directly. Maybe they can do it again. Or maybe we can provide a delivery API and then somebody could develop a delivery client or a whole delivery business. And so the goal of this project is really that backend server code that'll make everything work, and we're going to release it for free to the population in general. All right. So putting on my product manager hat, this is my PRD, my process requirement document for MVP, the minimum viable product that I can think of that would kind of put this idea all together. And basically what I'm thinking is 3 pieces. We're going to have a client user, the food orderer. I want them to be able to see restaurants, only restaurants that are opted in. We're not going to be going out and doing the thing where we're going to scrape people's restaurants and, load them on in. It's like, no, the restaurant's going to have to be like, yes, we're going to host our own backend and I want to be involved. We're going to allow them to view menus in the same format with pictures. They're going to have a cart. I am not necessarily starting this with like a shared cart in the sense of like, I'm going to start a cart and then my friend is going to add food to that and then I'll pay for everybody type of thing. I think we're just going to start with an individual cart. I want to pay the same way so that it is trusted. And then I want to be able to tip the driver. I want to be able to receive a confirmation. Ideally, I'd be able to track food and make complaints. Now these complaints, oops, that's backwards. These complaints, I'm expecting they're going to go straight to the restaurant. So the restaurant's going to handle complaints. For the restaurant, they're going to need an admin panel to manage their menus and their restaurants and their items and their prices and everything. They're going to need a way to enter in menus. I'm going to make it multi-menu, multi-location. I want them to be able to have specials and discounts. I want to be able to have a schedule by location. So literally the location of their restaurant, this building might be open or closed at different times than this building. I want them to be able to track and be able to send out drivers, process the payments and pay their driver. And they should be able to handle customer service. And then finally, delivery drivers should be able to see restaurants with open orders, claim a delivery, pick them up, deliver it, and receive their payments and tips. So very basic, something kind of getting the structure in place so that it could be iterated on later. And it's going back on. Now, that was a really nice MVP, but we are not going to be able to do anywhere near all of that. So looking at this even more critically, I'm going to completely defer the client user experience. I am going to let somebody else build that later. I'm going to let somebody else worry about the driver. And I am going to focus for this MVP solely on the restaurant manager's experience and getting this into a form that somebody else can put the client on top of. So this is the real stripped down MVP for project number 1, phase 1. All right. So that's actually enough to start planning the architecture of this project. And I've got a couple, oh my goodness, couple of different ideas here. So this is kind of the first one. And this is thinking really just in terms of the hardware involved, the kind of entities involved in what we're going to have to stand up. So I'm going to have a backend. The backend is going to be where menus, schedules, payments, and orders all live. This is going to be a server, and it's going to be probably on something like an EC2 instance. I'm going to have an admin client, which is going to have to be front end because people are going to have to manage the information on their backend. But this is something that could really be just paired on the same box. It could be hosted, server side rendered front end if we want to. Django does a really good job with stuff like that. And so basically, what would a restaurant owner be signing up for? They'd be signing up to have somebody, hopefully for not very expensive, stand them up EC2 instance and a database and host it and have a DNS. Then in order to figure out for the demo client, we're probably going to have to eventually build like a demo client, but let's pretend somebody else is building that for now. The demo client is going to want to look up restaurants. So restaurant discovery. So option number 1 is really, there's another server here. There's another centralized server that I host, that I pay for, that maybe the project pays for. Maybe we raise some money, a little bit of money, and stand up an itty bitty little server that basically just does restaurant lookups with the IPs. It might even be able to collect up deliveries if we needed to centralize that to a central spot. But otherwise, this could be really stripped down. And so the general process flow diagram of what it would look like to work within that system is the user's going to open their app, their client app. That's going to connect to the DNS server of that, that little stripped down, restaurant search server. And they're going to search for restaurants and food. And when they select a restaurant, then the client is then going to connect straight to the restaurant server, where they can browse the menu in detail, add the food with the cart, with the quantities, go through checkout. The restaurant would have, it would send a confirmation, could use, like a light email service Amazon provides, something like 100,000 emails a month for free. All right, so the restaurant is going to use Amazon's, I think it's simple message service. To send an email. The restaurant's going to make their food. The restaurant's going to send out the delivery. The user receives the food. Maybe both of them confirm one or the other, the driver or the user. Then the user can add a tip. The user's payment is charged and the user receives an email. And then if there's like a no-show or something, the user's going to dispute it directly with the restaurant or their credit card. All right, so that's a fairly straightforward process. But I would really like to not be in charge of hosting a permanent little restaurant server. So one of the things that I'm going to try to see if we can do is basically have a completely decentralized system where the restaurant backends talk to each other and exchange DNS lists. And if they can do that, then I don't need a centralized server. The demo client could connect to any given restaurant backend and still be able to potentially search all the restaurant backends in the peer-to-peer network, which might actually be really good for like little localized, areas. Maybe all the Bay Area ones share with each other, or maybe, some other ones all share it with each other. And then I don't have to worry about hosting that central server. That would be cheaper for me, but this would make things a little bit more complicated. Probably both on the actual architecture and on things like security are not going to be quite as straightforward. But we'll see. The process flow diagram does change a little bit. So the restaurant is going to provide codes to the users they'll have to provide it somehow. They'll have to do their own marketing. Maybe they do paper or email or ads, or just straight up word of mouth. Oh, hey, we're trying this new service. It's going to be cheaper for us. Then the user will open their app, enter in a code to connect to the single restaurant server, go ahead and connect, access a peer-to-peer list of restaurants, search for the restaurants in the food, select the restaurant, and then they're back to kind of where we were before. Overall, the restaurant manager setup, they're going to be logging into the admin client, entering in restaurant information, entering in menu information, setting up schedule, pushes, whether or not it's active. I've definitely got some open questions. There's a lot of open questions. And we might not even answer all of them. It may be that some of these are just going to be hard questions to push to later. But that's okay. We're going to want to find out how restaurants handle point of sale. How can we allow restaurants to handle payment? Can we tap into some centralized way of paying with things? Could we allow like Google Pay or Apple Pay or something? Could we leverage the fact that a user has probably already stored a certain amount of information on their phone somewhere and use that? So I'm going to assume that somebody will tell us how this works at some point. All right, so now we're all into database design. All right. Now, I usually like to start with basically objects, concepts, the abstract concepts, and how they're going to relate to each other. I got really used to Django's ORM model, which is not, it's fine. It's basically maps an object to a table one-to-one. We could use something a little bit more advanced like a data mapper, but I have found in general that like I've never really needed a data mapper model. So like 98% of the time, this type of relational object that we're going to work with works just fine. So I'm going to start with a location model. Now this is the restaurant location. So information about the restaurant, their particular location that we're going to be dealing with. And that restaurant is going to have a menu. And you might have multiple locations with the same menu, or you might have one location with multiple menus. So this is going to have to be a many-to-many relationship. Menus are going to have menu items. We know that. So if the menu itself is something like a breakfast menu, a lunch menu, a Mother's Day menu, then each one of those might have a set of actual menu items, so the dishes that are on them for sale. So we also are going to have a many-to-many relationship there. And I'm going to want to layer in a schedule here of location to menu, so that I know whether or not the location is open and the menu is being served. Then the user is going to want to make an order. So we definitely need an order object. Well, a user can order the same thing multiple times. They may order multiple items at once. So we've got another many-to-many linkage here. Each order is going to have a single client. So that's the end user. Each order is going to have a single delivery. Each delivery should have a driver. And that's that. And so this is basically this schema with all of the detail information on each one of those that we're going to need in order to get this framework kind of running. So let's go through it real quick. Remember, we were looking for, we want an admin panel to manage it. We're going to be entering menus with multi-menus, multi-location. I got that. We got many-to-many, many-to-many. We need to be able to receive and confirm orders. So we've got our order. We've got a status. So we'll know whether or not that was confirmed, whether or not it's closed. We want people to be able to manage the deliveries. So I've got order ID, driver ID, pictures, notes, information over here. The driver's got an ID and a name. The client's got an ID, email, phone to start. Probably gonna need an address here. All right, well, no, I'm gonna put the delivery on the, I'm gonna put the address on the delivery. I'm not necessarily gonna store it here. Which makes sense because I might want to have things delivered to different places on different days. I don't necessarily need the address tied straight to the client for any reason. Order to menu item. This one's a many-to-many, but it's also kind of interesting because I just went ahead and added the quantity and the price and a note straight to the many-to-many relationship, because I might want 3 packs of chips. And it would be good to record the price that was the price at the moment that the order was ordered. So we'd be able to do information like that by linking order to menu items with the actual order. When was it ordered at? Who was it ordered by? Payment processing, we'll calculate tips. We can do delivery tips, delivery fees. And so then they'll be able to sum up, we'll be able to sum up by driver how much delivery tips and fees is owed. And then we're going to want a customer phone, like a phone number provided. So every location is going to need a phone number. I like to add deleted ats or soft deletes for things in general. If I think that somebody's going to need to delete something, we might want to add a deleted at to the menu items as well. But yeah. So here's a bunch of stuff that we are just deferring for now. Like we're just not going to care. And it's a lot of stuff, but it's not necessarily things that couldn't be fixed in an iteration later. So I'm not too worried. All right. So I'm going to be working with Django Rest framework. The REST framework is really nice because it provides a RESTful API interface with serializers and a lot of good stuff around, like, filtering and sorting and paging, etc. We're going to use a Postgres database, GitHub, G-Unicorn and Nginx is going to be involved in the hosting of it. I'm going to try to Dockerize this whole thing and put it on AWS with ECS and RDS instances. I've looked into it, and we could get some playtime on both of these for about a year for free, as long as it is very light usage. So just for a development server, I think that'll be good to start. Backend, we've got email and SMS, and we've got a peer-to-peer library here that I want to look into to see whether or not it would be feasible to do option number 2. Otherwise, we always have the backup of, well, we're just going to have to stand up a little centralized server. And then for the front end, eventually we'll get around to React with hooks and context instead of Redux. We're not going to play with Redux. I like that. Basically just involves Axios. I might play with Ant Design. That's a front end design product that I like, and maybe a React Native for a mobile client. Okay, so questions. Could I clarify why we need a location ID and menu ID in the schedule table, but also a location to menu table? Let's take a look here. Potentially no real reason. I think if we require schedules, then if we were, yeah. The concept of a schedule to me was kind of like when a menu is going to be active, at what location. So it might not be active all the time. I do want to make sure that there is at the very least like a default menu, maybe, in case the start times and end times don't overlap, but we could do some verification on that. Yeah, let's try it without the location to menu. We could try it. If we need it later, we could add it back in. All righty. Yeah. Any other questions? Any thoughts? What do y'all think? Does it sound like something that's doable, useful?
I see one yes in the chat, Katerina. Yeah, but like some people may be like more beginner things. So like we're just trying to like, absorb all the content that you're like sharing. We'll have to like review it, right?
Yep.
Full understanding. But yeah, this is great. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of yeses in the chat.
Okay, no, that's good. Do you see any potential problems? I will tell you, one of the things that I've been thinking about is just straight up adoption. How to get restaurants who are probably not very tech savvy to get on board. And I feel like there's going to have to be a certain amount of like hand holding and hosting for them. But I do think that at the end of the day, that would be probably more financially acceptable to them to own the technology that is backing up their restaurant and to be able to, pay for upgrades as they need it to individuals instead of to the giant corporations. So, yeah. Who's going to manage the drivers? They would need to register somewhere. Yes. Right now, I am thinking that the restaurant is just going to manage their drivers. They're going to have a list of drivers that they know of, and they're going to assign the deliveries to the drivers, and they're going to, have them maybe be at the restaurant or call them up, say I have a delivery. Maybe drivers will have their favorite restaurants that they like to go pick up from and deliver for. And then they'll be able to search for deliveries that are available and claim them and go to the restaurant and pick them up, do their deliveries. But I'm really pushing in this instance for the drivers to develop a relationship with the restaurant. I wouldn't be surprised if, a lot of them already have, if they currently have people coming in and out for other services. It probably wouldn't be that hard to hand them a slip of paper that says, hey, we're using this too. Why don't you sign up? And then get people who are interested in driving onto the platform. Payments is probably the biggest thing biggest unknown for me right now. I actually managed a team that did payments, and I am hoping that through either plugins or some like custom scripts or people basically giving back to the open source project, we can handle the type of payment systems that restaurants currently use so that we don't necessarily have to sign them up for new things. I am not sure what they currently use. It's probably a variety of things. But yeah. All right. Well, so next steps. Next time, I'm going to go over standing up the Django project, getting the basic database tables all synced up, and applying a RESTful API to it, and hopefully getting the beginnings of the admin panel in place. So a way to manage all of this data. Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great job, Katerina. I know you make it look so easy for all this large, like indecipherable content, and you're just doing chunks. I'm like, wow, that was really quick, and I understood it. Like, it must be really easy, but no, it's just like a lot of like content information that you managed to put together. So thank you so much for creating that for the first session. Yeah, a lot of people see it's like learned a lot. It was like very clear. Julie's like, oh, on because it's just like, yeah, I was like, oh, that's it. Like,
That's it.
that's like, that was hard. No,
No,
it's
I'm
really hard.
telling you, I do not.
I'm sure everything green's great. With a question from Mary, are you going to share the slide deck in the channel
Yes.
or okay? And then did you? I know
Happy
this is
to
coming for you.
share the slide
Yeah.
deck, and I can share the links that I had too.
Okay, and yeah, I think we were discussing too with one of our senior leads, Karen, who helped, created the Regic series. I really like this like cat appearance. Having a GitHub repo, but we're still working on that, I think, on top of your day job. Yeah, but it will be in our Lumina Code Python GitHub repo, like the slide links and stuff. And we're working on it. It's never end. Okay. There's nothing else that I can give everybody else like their Tuesday night. Okay.
Yeah, yep, that's really what I had for round one.
Okay.
Yep.
Excited to see next session. And it'll be 4 sessions, right?
I
3 or 4.
might have gone up to 5.
5? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. So then we'll do every 2 weeks and it's Tuesday, 8 p.m. EST. And so it means we'll continue until July. And everything will be recorded. It's great.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. Such a good job, Katerina. I'm really proud of you. So, all right. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week and a happy June tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Have a good one.